In this video, I'm going to cover completing the square in more detail than in the last video. Our goal when we're trying to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square is to build one of these guys, a perfect square trinomial. It'll have a perfect square here at the beginning, a perfect square at the end, and then the middle term will be twice the product of the square roots of those first and last. If we have a plus here, then when we factor, we get a plus. If we have a minus, when we factor, we get a minus. Okay, so this is our goal, building a perfect square trinomial. And we always follow the same procedure. First step is always divide everything, both sides of the equation, by any number that's in front of the x squared. We really need the leading coefficient to be a 1. Then if we have a constant, we move it to the other side. We take half of the number sitting beside x, we square that, and we add that to both sides. Then the left-hand side will be one of those perfect square trinomials, and we use the square root property to solve. Okay, so an actual example. Say we want to solve x squared minus 6x plus 8 by completing the square. First thing we want to do, look at the leading coefficient. Right here in front of the x squared, we have a 1. If there were a number there, we would divide everything by that number. We don't have anything there. We have a 1. Dividing through by 1 doesn't change anything. So step 2, we want this 8 out of the way. It's in the way. Get it to the other side. When I'm doing this, I like to leave a plus blank on each side because I know I'm going to be adding something in. So this is to remind myself and to leave space. I'm going to add something next to both sides. Okay, next we look at the number that's in front of x. Not really worried about the minus. The minus will take care of itself, but this is a negative 6. We take half of that. Half of negative 6 is negative 3. That's not what goes in the blank though. We square that. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. A negative times a negative is a positive. That's what goes in the blank. 9. On both sides. It has to be both sides. Now this left side is a perfect square trinomial. This first term, x squared, is x squared. The last term, 9, is 3 squared. And 6x is 2 times 3 times x. So half of 6 is 3. Square root of 9 is 3. That's how you test. Half of this guy should be this guy's square root. So the left side is a perfect square trinomial. It will factor. The right side's just arithmetic. Negative 8 plus 9 is 1. Okay, so the left side factors. X, always an x here, or whatever our variable is. If we had k squared minus 6k, then that would be a k. Because we have a minus here, we get a minus in the parentheses. And then that number we had before we squared it, half of the 6 is the 3, or square root of 9 is the 3. Goes here. Squared. So, make sure you understand that part. This left side is really, it just factors x minus 3, which is x minus 3 squared. The right side was just that negative 8 plus 9, it's just 1. Now we just finish up by taking the square root of both sides. We're allowed to take the square root of both sides as long as we put a plus or minus on one side. Square root of x minus 3 squared is x minus 3. And the square root of 1 is 1. We put the plus or minus because anytime you take the square root of both sides, you have to put plus or minus on one side. So we're right here. Move the 3 over. We get x is 3 plus or minus 1. So x is 3 plus 1, which is 4. Or x is 3 minus 1, which is 2. These are the two solutions to this equation. You could check this particular example by factoring. If you factor, you get the same thing, or quadratic formula, or whatever your favorite method is. Okay, a more complicated example. We want to solve this equation by completing the square. First thing we do, get rid of this 3. It's in the way, we don't want it. Divide everything by 3. So 3 over 3 is just 1. Now we have a leading coefficient of 1, which is what we wanted. 8 divided by 3, or 24 divided by 3 is 8. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 0 divided by 3 is still 0. Okay, now we want to get this constant out of the way. It's in our way. Get it to the other side. So we get x squared minus 8x plus blank is negative 2 plus blank. Take half of the middle number. Half of 8 is 4. So half of negative 8 is negative 4. That's not what goes in the blanks. Square that. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. That's what goes in the blanks. Again, the check. Half of this guy, half of 8, should be the same as the square root of this guy, square root of 16. And that's true. Half of 8 is 4, square root of 16 is 4. On the right side, don't forget you had to add 16 to both sides. On the right side, we'll get negative 2 plus 16, we'll get 14. So this left side is now a perfect square trinomial. It'll factor parentheses, always x. Whatever this symbol is, if it's a minus, if it's a plus. And then that number we had before we squared it, not the 16, the 4. Half of 8, or square root of 16. And now we take the square root of both sides. We get x minus 4 is plus or minus root 14. And then we move the 4 over. X is 4 plus or minus root 14. We're done. That's it. That can't be simplified anymore. Okay, some other videos should be popping up now. Click on those for similar topics.